Welcome to this presentation on higher-order components. We are going to understand what higher-order components are and when to use them. Let's dive in. So, what exactly is a higher-order component? A higher-order component, often abbreviated as HOC, is a function that takes a component as an argument and returns a new, enhanced component. The code snippet illustrates this concept. We define a function named with enhancement that accepts a component. Inside with enhancement, we return another function, enhanced component, which receives props as an argument. Within enhanced component, you can add additional logic to enhance the original component's functionality before rendering it with its props. Let's look at a basic example of a higher-order component in action. On the left, we have the with-loading HOC. It takes a component as input and returns a new component. This new component checks if the isLoading prop is true. If it is, it renders a loading message. Otherwise, it renders the original component with all its props. On the right side is how we can use it. First, we define a user profile component that simply displays a user's name. Then we use with-loading to create a new component called enhanced profile. Now, when we render enhanced profile, it will automatically display a loading message if the isLoading prop is true. Higher-order components are often used to solve common problems in React applications. Here are a few common use cases. One pattern is authentication. This can be used to protect certain components and only render them if the user is logged in. Another common pattern is loading states. This can be used to display a loading indicator while data is being fetched. Finally, data fetching can be used to inject API data into components. The code snippet shows an example of an authentication HOC. It takes a component as input and returns a new component. This new component checks if the isAuthenticated prop is true. If it is not, it renders a login form. Otherwise, it renders the original component. Let's see a more detailed example of a data-fetching higher-order component. This withData function takes a URL as an argument as well as a component. It then returns a new component that handles fetching data from the given URL. Inside the returned component, we use the useState hook to manage the data and loading state. The useEffect hook is used to fetch the data when the component mounts. Once the data is fetched, it's passed as a prop to the wrapped component, along with the loading state. So, when should you use higher-order components? HOCs are a good choice when you have logic that spans multiple components, such as authentication or data fetching. They're also useful for sharing common behavior across components. Finally, HOCs can be used for conditional rendering, where you want to show or hide components based on certain conditions. Some benefits of using HOCs are code reusability, separation of concerns, and enhanced composability. Now let's compare higher-order components with React hooks. Higher-order components create wrapper components around existing ones, add new props and functionality, and work with both class and functional components. On the other hand, React hooks are used directly inside function components, manage state and side effects natively, and only work with functional components. Here are some best practices to keep in mind when working with higher-order components. First, use the with prefix for HOC names to clearly identify them. Always forward and use props to the wrapped component to avoid unexpected behavior. Finally, consider using custom hooks for modern React applications, as they offer a more flexible and composable alternative in many cases. The code sample shows a good naming convention for the HOC, using the with logger name. Also, it shows how to pass through all the props to the wrap component. If you like this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Visit CodeLucky.com for more such useful content.